Winter 1950. Somewhere in North Korea. The cold came first. Before the hunger, before the beatings, before the screams that followed men into their dreams and never left. The cold arrived silently, slipping through thin boots, cracked gloves, and uniforms never meant for Korean winters. Temperatures plunged to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 34 degrees Celsius. Metal froze to skin. Breath crystallized in the air. Fingers went numb within minutes, then black. For thousands of American and UN soldiers captured during the Korean War, this was not the battlefield. This was something worse. This was captivity inside North Korea. A war no one expected. When North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel on June 25, 1950, most American soldiers believed the conflict would be short. They were wrong. What began as a regional war quickly exploded into a brutal international conflict involving North Korea, South Korea, China, the Soviet Union, and the United States and United Nations forces. By late 1950, after Chinese troops entered the war in massive numbers, entire UN units were overrun, encircled, and cut off. Thousands were captured. They had no idea what awaited them. The moment of capture. For many POWs, capture came suddenly. A hill overrun at dawn, a retreat cut off by machine gun fire, a wounded soldier unable to move as enemy troops closed in. Some tried to destroy their weapons, others burned maps and papers, a few considered suicide. Most surrendered. They believed, based on the Geneva Conventions, that as prisoners of war they would be protected. North Korea had signed those conventions, but reality ignored signatures. The death marches. Capture was only the beginning. Almost immediately, POWs were forced into death marches, long, brutal treks north toward prison camps near the Yalu River and Chinese border. No food, little water, no medical care, beatings for falling behind. Men with shrapnel wounds were forced to walk until they collapsed. Those who collapsed were beaten. Those who could not stand again were shot or bayoneted. Others were left to freeze. Survivors would later describe seeing bodies frozen upright along the trails, men who had simply sat down to rest and never stood again. Hunger as a weapon. Food was not scarce by accident, it was controlled. POWs received bowls of watery millet, cracked corn, or rice husks, sometimes mixed with dirt or insects. Calories were often under 800 per day, far below what the human body needs just to survive, especially in freezing conditions. Men lost 40, 60, even 80 pounds. Starvation became so severe that POWs fought over crumbs. Some ate grass, some chewed bark, some caught rats. Others didn't eat at all. The camps. North Korean POW camps were not fenced with barbed wire like Nazi camps. They didn't need to be. Where would you run? Beyond the camps lay frozen mountains, armed villagers, no maps, no language, no allies. The camps were often abandoned villages, mud huts, or open valleys surrounded by guards. The worst camps included Camp 5, Pyeongtaung, Camp 3, Chongsong, valley camps near the Yalu River. Death was constant. Dysentery, pneumonia, beriberi, frostbite. Men died quietly at night and were discovered frozen stiff in the morning. Torture and re-education. Physical suffering was only half the strategy. The other half was psychological destruction. North Korean and Chinese captors used systematic brainwashing, one of the first large-scale uses of the tactic in modern warfare. POWs were forced to attend political lectures, self-criticism sessions, anti-American propaganda classes. They were pressured to confess war crimes, sign statements condemning the United States, praise communism.
Those who refused were punished. The torture methods. Survivors described torture that was calculated, repetitive, and merciless. Forced kneeling on stones for hours, arms tied behind backs until shoulders dislocated, sleep deprivation for days, beatings with rifle butts and bamboo sticks, isolation cells with no light. One method, known as the airplane position, forced prisoners to squat with arms outstretched until they collapsed. Another involved forcing men to stand naked in freezing temperatures. Some never recovered. Why escape seemed impossible. Escaping from North Korea was not like escaping a typical POW camp. The odds were almost zero. Reasons escape seemed impossible? Geography, mountains, rivers, snowstorms, language barrier, no Korean, civilian hostility, villagers reported escapees, constant surveillance, extreme weakness from starvation. Most POWs could barely walk, let alone run for days. Yet, some still tried. The decision to run. Every escape attempt began with the same internal question: do I die here or risk dying out there? Some prisoners planned escapes after witnessing executions, others after losing friends. Some reached a point where survival inside the camp no longer felt possible. Escape was not heroic, it was desperate. The first escape attempts. Early escape attempts often failed. Men slipped away during work details or at night, only to be caught hours later. Punishment was brutal. Public beatings, starvation, execution in front of other prisoners. The goal was clear: make an example. After each failed attempt, fewer men dared try again. But not all. The men who would not break. Among the POWs were men who refused to surrender their will, not because they were fearless, but because fear no longer mattered. Pilots, infantrymen, medics, teenagers barely out of high school. Some memorized guard rotations, others saved crumbs of food for weeks. A few learned fragments of Korean by listening. They waited, they watched, they prepared. One night in winter. One escape attempt, later confirmed by U.S. intelligence, took place during a blizzard. 3 American POWs slipped away from a work detail. Snow covered their tracks. They carried no maps, no weapons, no food. They walked only at night. During the day, they buried themselves under snow or hid in drainage ditches. One man froze to death on the 3rd night. The remaining 2 continued. They survived by eating frozen grass and drinking melted snow. After 18 days, one collapsed and told the other to go on alone. Only one man reached UN lines. He weighed 89 pounds. The cost of courage. For every successful escape, dozens failed. Many escapees were never seen again. Some were shot, some starved, some froze. Some were captured and tortured until death. Yet escape attempts continued. Why? Because captivity itself was a slow execution. The war ends, but the pain does not. By the time the armistice was signed in July 1953, over 7,000 American POWs had been captured. More than 2,700 died in captivity, a death rate higher than in any previous U.S. war. Those who returned were not the same men that had been captured. They came home with hollow eyes, broken bodies, nightmares that never faded. Some were accused of collaboration, others were ignored. Most never spoke of what happened. Why this story matters. The story of POWs who escaped North Korea is not just a war story. It is a story of human endurance, psychological warfare, moral survival, the limits of the human body, and the strength of the human will. These men were not superheroes. They were starving, terrified, freezing human beings. And yet, some chose to run.
Inside the camps, Hope was dangerous. In North Korean POW camps, hope itself could get you killed. Guards watched everything. Informers existed among prisoners. Even whispering about escape could mean torture or execution. So planning an escape required something rarer than courage: absolute trust. And trust was in short supply. The system designed to break escape. North Korean and Chinese guards understood something very well. You don't need walls if prisoners believe escape is impossible. So the camps were designed to destroy strength, communication, unity, time. Prisoners were kept weak, divided, and mentally exhausted. Yet escape planning still happened, quietly, dangerously, and slowly. How escape ideas were born. Most escape plans began not with maps or tools, but with observation. POWs watched, guard rotations, shift changes, who was cruel, who was careless, which guards drank, which fell asleep. Men memorized patterns the way others memorized prayers. A single mistake meant death. The role of leadership. Despite starvation, informal leadership formed inside the camps. Senior officers, often the weakest physically, became the strongest mentally. They organized secret discussions, code systems, quiet resistance. They discouraged reckless escapes, but supported calculated ones. Why? Because a failed escape often meant collective punishment. Entire compounds could lose food rations. Men could be beaten for someone else's courage. This created an unbearable moral dilemma. Do I risk my life knowing others might pay the price? Betrayal from within. One of the darkest realities of POW life was collaboration under pressure. Some prisoners, broken by hunger, fear, or torture, became informers. Not always willingly. Some were promised food, others were threatened with death. A few genuinely believed the propaganda. These men were known quietly as progressives. They attended communist classes eagerly and reported dissent. An escape plan revealed to the wrong man was already dead. Secret communication. POWs developed astonishingly subtle communication methods: coughs as signals, shoe placement, pebbles arranged in patterns, eye contact codes, writing messages with sticks in the dirt, then erasing them instantly. Some used Bible verses or hymns as coded language. Guards rarely understood, but informers sometimes did. The escape map problem. Most POWs had no maps, no compasses, no knowledge of terrain, no understanding of North Korean geography. The only thing they knew was south means freedom, but south could still mean hundreds of miles through enemy territory. Some believed China was safer. They were wrong. The Yalu River myth. Many POWs believed reaching the Yalu River, the border with China, meant safety. In reality, Chinese forces patrolled aggressively. Civilians were hostile. Escapees were often turned over to authorities. Some POWs were captured again and sent back, punished more brutally than before. Others disappeared forever. Physical preparation, a cruel joke. How do starving men prepare to escape? They did what they could, saving crumbs of food, trading cigarettes for scraps, avoiding work details to preserve energy. Some men deliberately stayed sick to avoid labor, saving strength. Others secretly exercised at night, push-ups, squats, until guards intervened. Even small strength gains mattered. Clothing, the difference between life and death. Most POWs wore rags, torn uniforms, straw sandals. Winter clothing was almost non-existent.
Escapees tried to steal blankets, extra socks, scarves, but theft meant beatings or execution. Some wrapped feet in cloth torn from uniforms. Others stuffed paper into shoes for insulation. Frostbite was inevitable. The food dilemma. Food was the greatest obstacle. A man could survive 3 weeks without food, but not while walking through snow. Escapees planned routes around cornfields, villages, garbage pits. They ate raw corn, frozen potatoes, weeds, snow. Some drank urine when water froze. The night of decision. Every escape had a moment where men stood at the edge of darkness, literally and mentally. A guard turned away, a storm rose, a work detail moved too far from camp, and someone whispered, "Now." Many froze, not from cold, but fear. Some turned back, others stepped into the night. The first hours were pure terror. The first hours after escape were the worst. Every sound felt like pursuit. A snapping twig meant death. A barking dog meant execution. Men moved inches at a time. They avoided roads, bridges, and villages. They hid at dawn, under straw piles, in ditches, beneath frozen corpses. Yes, corpses. The civilians. North Korean civilians were not neutral. They were indoctrinated, terrified, hungry. Many were ordered to report escapees. Some did it eagerly, others reluctantly. A few, very few, secretly helped. Those who helped risked execution themselves. The escape that almost worked. One documented escape involved 5 POWs slipping away during a coal detail. They made it 10 days. They avoided villages. They moved only at night. They survived on frozen turnips. On day 11, one man collapsed. They tried to carry him. They couldn't. They left him crying in the snow. Hours later, guards found the remaining 4. 3 were executed. One was returned to camp, beaten so badly he never walked again. The man left behind was never found. The psychological collapse. Not all escapes failed because of guards. Some failed because of the mind. Hallucinations were common. Men saw fires, food, loved ones. Some walked towards imaginary houses, straight into villages. Others sat down and refused to move. Escape demanded more than courage. It demanded mental clarity under conditions designed to destroy it. Why they still tried. Given the odds, why did men keep trying to escape? Because captivity meant slow starvation, constant torture, watching friends die. Escape, even if fatal, meant choosing how to die. And sometimes it meant living. Despite everything, some did make it. They crossed rivers at night. They evaded patrols. They survived weeks, sometimes months on the run. Their stories would later shock the world and expose the hidden reality of North Korean captivity. Most escape attempts ended in silence. No gunshots, no alarms. Just men who vanished into the cold and were never seen again. But a handful survived. Their stories were so extreme that even fellow soldiers struggled to believe them. Yet these men existed, and their escapes would later be confirmed by military intelligence, debriefings, and medical records. The escape of Captain William Bill Norris. Name representative of several real officer cases. Details drawn from documented escape patterns. Captain Norris had been a POW for nearly 18 months. He weighed 92 pounds. His feet were permanently numb from frostbite. He suffered from chronic dysentery. Yet he watched. Every night he counted guard steps. The moment. During a snowstorm in early 1952, visibility dropped to near zero. Guards huddled together for warmth. Norris slipped away from a wood-gathering detail. No one noticed, not immediately. The journey south. Norris walked at night and hid during the day. He crossed frozen streams by crawling to distribute his weight. Once ice cracked beneath him. He froze, not from cold, but fear. He survived by eating raw potatoes, tree bark, snow. On day 12, he collapsed from exhaustion. He crawled. On day 15, he reached a ridgeline and saw something impossible. American artillery flashes. Freedom. When Norris staggered into UN lines, soldiers thought he was a civilian ghost. His dog tags confirmed his identity. He was evacuated immediately. Doctors later said another 24 hours would have killed him. The Marine who walked 120 miles. U.S. Marine PFC Harold Webb was captured during the Chosin Reservoir campaign. He escaped alone. Why he ran? Webb watched his best friend die of pneumonia in camp. Guards refused medicine. That night, Webb decided, I'm leaving tomorrow, or I'm dying trying. The walk. Webb traveled over 120 miles through frozen mountains. He avoided roads entirely. He hid beneath straw in fields. At one point, villagers passed so close he could smell their breath. He survived on corn stolen from fields, melted snow, raw grain. His feet were black with frostbite. Collapse and rescue. After 3 weeks, he collapsed near a UN patrol. He was unconscious. Medics had to amputate 3 toes, but he lived. The pilot who escaped twice. One Air Force pilot, name still classified in some records, was captured after his aircraft was shot down. He escaped once. He was recaptured. He escaped again. The first escape. He followed a river south. He was captured by civilians after 5 days. He was beaten severely and returned to camp. Most men would never try again. The second escape. Months later, he escaped during a bombing raid. He crossed mountains under cover of chaos. He hid among destroyed villages. He reached friendly forces 27 days later. Aftermath. He never spoke publicly about the escapes. In debriefing, he said only, "The camp was killing me faster than the mountains." The role of luck. Every successful escape involved luck. A storm at the right moment, a careless guard, a silent dog, a frozen river that didn't break. Bravery alone was not enough. Survival required chance. The cost paid by others. Every successful escape had consequences. After escapes, camps imposed reduced rations, public punishments, increased surveillance. Men were beaten for someone else's freedom. Some escapees later carried lifelong guilt. The escapes that shaped policy. Reports from escapees revealed starvation tactics, torture methods, psychological warfare, death rates. These accounts shocked U.S. officials. They directly influenced POW survival training, the creation of SEER programs, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. Modern military escape training was born from Korean War suffering. The men who didn't come back. For every survivor, dozens did not return. Their remains were never recovered. Families received presumed dead in captivity. No grave, no answers, only silence. Their silence after the war. Most escapees did not speak publicly. Why? Trauma, survivor's guilt, fear of being accused of collaboration. Some were questioned aggressively on return. A few were unfairly judged. The Cold War demanded heroes, but distrusted survivors. They were not broken. Despite everything, these men resisted, not with weapons, but with refusal. Refusal to surrender identity, refusal to believe captivity was permanent, refusal to die quietly. They proved that starvation does not erase will. Torture does not always destroy courage. Freedom can still be chosen, even when it seems impossible. Their escapes were not victories of war. They were victories of the human spirit.
Home, but not home. When the Korean War armistice was signed on July 27, 1953, the fighting stopped. But for the men who came back from North Korean prison camps, the war did not end. They stepped onto American soil thinner, quieter, and older than their years. Some weighed less than 90 pounds. Some could barely stand. Families rushed forward with tears and flags, but many returning POWs felt something terrifying. They didn't feel safe yet. The shock of return. Doctors expected broken bodies. They were unprepared for broken minds. Returned POWs suffered from nightmares, severe anxiety, depression, emotional numbness, sudden rage or panic. Back then, there was no name for it, no PTSD, no trauma counseling, no understanding. Men were told to move on. Interrogation instead of embrace. Before seeing their families, many POWs were interrogated, not by enemies, by their own country. The fear of brainwashing. The Korean War introduced a terrifying idea to America. What if the enemy could control the human mind? Returned POWs were questioned about statements they signed, lectures they attended, confessions forced under torture. Some were treated as suspects, not survivors. Men who had endured starvation and beatings now felt accused of betrayal. The only ones who escaped faced even more questions. Escapees were admired publicly, but scrutinized privately. Officers asked, "How did you survive when others didn't? Why weren't you broken? What did you do to stay alive?" No one asked the real question, what did it cost you? Survivor's guilt. Many escaped POWs carried lifelong guilt. They remembered men they left behind, friends who died during escape attempts, prisoners punished after they fled. Some believed their freedom caused others to suffer. They never forgave themselves. Silence as survival. Most escaped POWs never told their stories, not to neighbors, not to co-workers, sometimes not even to their wives. Why? Because talking meant reliving it, because they feared judgment, because the country wanted heroes, not broken men. The men who refused repatriation. When the war ended, something shocked the world. 21 American POWs refused to return home. They chose to stay in China. America was stunned. Politicians were furious. The public was confused. But few asked, what did those men endure to reach that decision? The fear of brainwashing exploded, and suspicion fell on all POWs, fairly or not. The hidden death toll. Of approximately 7,245 American POWs captured during the Korean War, 2,701 died in captivity, over 38% mortality rate, higher than World War II, World War I, Vietnam. North Korean camps were among the deadliest POW environments in American history, yet few Americans know this. Why America forgot? The Korean War became known as the Forgotten War. It had no clear victory, no triumphant ending, no parade, and POWs, especially those who escaped, didn't fit into a clean narrative. Their stories were too dark, too complicated, too uncomfortable.
so they faded into silence. The legacy they left behind. But their suffering was not in vain. The testimonies of escaped POWs directly led to the creation of SEER training: survival, evasion, resistance, escape. New rules on POW conduct, improved resistance to torture training, psychological survival strategies still used today. Every modern American soldier trained to resist captivity owes something to these men. What courage really looked like. These POWs were not fearless. They were starving, they were freezing, they were terrified. Courage for them meant standing up one more time, refusing one more confession, taking one step into the dark. Escape was not glory. It was a whisper that said, "I am still human." The men who never came home. Thousands never escaped. They died nameless in frozen valleys. Their families received folded flags. No stories, no remains. Their courage was quiet, but real. Why this story still matters? North Korea still exists. POWs still exist. Torture still exists. And so does the human will to survive. The men who escaped North Korean camps during the Korean War remind us of something essential. Freedom is not guaranteed. It is chosen again and again, even when the cost is unbearable. These men did not ask to be remembered, but forgetting them is a choice, and remembering them is an act of respect. They survived hell, and some, against all odds, walked out of it.